In the first days, we were so isolated. We hid ourselves away. Most did all they could to cut themselves off. We had no idea how far the horror reached, how deep. We would learn soon enough. Today on the Comic Book Report, DCeased by Tom Taylor. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and you are watching the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I finally get to talk about DC's zombie event series, DCeased. But first, a few quick facts about today's collection. DCeased was written by Tom Taylor and penciled by Trevor Hairsine and others. The issues in today's collection were first published by DC Comics in 2019. This trade paperback includes DCeased issues 1 through 6 and DCeased A Good Day to Die issue 1 and comes in at 232 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a brief spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the entirety of today's collection as well as commenting on some plot points. You've been warned. Okay, and here's your first look at today's collection. Sorry, we have a little bit of glare here. But as you can see, we have that black and red looking coloring, and of course the zombified Batman on that front cover. Oh, it's so creepy. Then you can go ahead and get a look at the spine, of course, which, is a bit thicker for a 7-issue series. But it does include a few extras. And then we can see along the back, we got more of that black and red with some blood drips. You got a description. Everything is pretty straightforward. I'd like to say as well, the edition in my hands is a standard size trade paperback and includes matte paper stock, so it's more of that newspaper-like quality as opposed to a glossy finished paper stock. Now we can go ahead and get a look inside the collection itself. You've got the front matter, the title pages, things like that. I would like to say I love that this edition includes the issues covers at the front of each issue. I love that feature. I miss when collections don't include the cover to the issue in front of each subsequent issue. So right out of the gate, I'm really happy to see that. Okay, as far as what you can expect with DCeased, I think it's probably quite clear based on the name and the cover images, but this is DC's take on a zombie dystopian universe. The story takes place outside of the main DC universe's main universe continuity. It's probably more of an Elseworlds kind of story, or certainly another universe's happenings within the DC multiverse. How the zombie infection within this world kicks off, however, is kind of fun. Basically, Darkseid gets a hold of Victor Stone, the Cyborg, and he finally gets a version of the anti-life equation, his ultimate plan, ultimate weapon. However, the anti-life equation is a corrupted form or an incomplete form of some kind, and this corrupted anti-life equation essentially creates this techno-organic virus that basically creates mindless zombies. This zombie infection is then transmitted when anyone engages with a screen that is connected to Wi-Fi or internet or things like that. So everyone looking at their phones or computers, if they're connected to an internet connection, succumb to this zombie plague. And I believe this disease can also transfer via physical contact in the normal zombie ways at that point. So, this plague is unleashed kind of unwittingly via Cyborg when he comes back from the planet Apocalypse, having been corrupted by the anti-life corrupted equation from Darkseid, and it spreads like wildfire in this modern, screen-heavy world. And immediately, the heroes and villains of Earth are assaulted by this zombie menace. There are losses on both sides right away, and it has the heroes just scrambling to stop it or to figure out what to do. And with the internet not viable anymore, they have to find alternative means for communication and gathering. And honestly, that's the setup. From there, the rest of DCeased concerns itself with trying to gather the remaining heroes, their families, and trying to stop this plague, or certainly at least to survive or figure out a means to move forward. As in many zombie stories, the situation gets bleaker and bleaker, even for these mighty heroes. And at this point, now that I've given you a bit of the setup, I just have to say, I'm not a zombie fan. So the rest of this review, I might be a bit biased, because they're just not my favorite. And I know post-Walking Dead craze, or even with all the George Romero movies, zombies are such a big part of our popular culture, and I've just never really been in love with them. I think with comics or even shows like The Walking Dead, what works is the characters, not even the zombie trope. And I think that there's a lot of bad zombie fiction out there that focus more on the zombies and not about the character storytelling. It's because of this that I wasn't overly excited when I got to things like Marvel Zombies, which was okay. It just feels a little gimmicky to me. Not that that series didn't also have some strengths, but because of my history here, I was a little bit trepidatious when I thought about DCeased. It didn't really overwhelm me with this sense that I have to read it. I must know what happens. I kind of thought, is this going to be just very similar to Marvel Zombies? Is this going to be another retread? Am I going to have to buy into the gimmick again? But I kept hearing from people that you've got to read it. This is Tom Taylor, our guy Tom Taylor. Tom Taylor is a hero. Tom Taylor is the GOAT. He is the best. And so I thought, okay, I took a deep breath. I got this collection and I said, well, let's see what it has. And I would say overall, I was pretty satisfied with DCeased. I will say, it's still a bit gimmicky for me. I do have to buy into the whole zombie plague within the DC universe. But with that in mind, I can kind of let myself relax and enjoy this kind of what-if story. What happens to my heroes if the zombie virus breaks out? What happens to my heroes if they get infected? What if? And honestly, in that situation, I think Tom Taylor is a great person to make me care about my characters in impossible circumstances. I also have to admit, I definitely found this story engaging. I was eager to keep reading, and ultimately, I was never really disappointed by the story we got throughout this collection. In my mind, Tom Taylor delivered again, and he made me care about my characters again. And I think that that was definitely served by the artist that illustrated this book. The artist definitely realized the violence and the kind of horrific nature of zombies. We see them throughout, and they are done really well. We get the blood and guts, we get the teeth, we get the grossness, and we get to see some of our heroes corrupted by it. And to see the physical transformation that the artists do for some of these heroes and villains is pretty intense and awesome to behold. I mean, look at Batman's front cover and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or look at all these pages you're seeing before you throughout this video. And yet somehow, with all that being said, the art is great, but it wasn't a standout to me. I think that if I ever tried to encourage someone to read DCeased or I was talking about it, I wouldn't really lead with the art. I would lead with the gimmick, I would lead with Tom Taylor's writing, I would lead with the kind of narrative storytelling and how they framed it, and some of the creative little twists and turns. And I would say, yeah, they did zombies really well, and the art was good. But I can't say that it was overwhelmingly stand out, at least for me. I did love the covers, however, but overall, the art was not the thing most commendable about DCeased, in my opinion. And now that we're done with that, why don't we go ahead and give this collection a grade. For its consistent and detailed art throughout, particularly with how it depicted the zombies, even if it wasn't a showstopper in my opinion, coupled with some very strong character moments from some of my heroes, as they went forward and navigated the unthinkable. The Comic Book Report has to give Tom Taylor's DCeased a B. This is an above average story that is personally one of my favorite zombie comic works. It's at times gruesome and violent, but also intensely moving, and included a broad array of DC characters, much to my delight. It serves well enough as a standalone story, with very little context, if any, needed before grabbing it, while simultaneously making me a little excited to check out some of the other sequels or tie-in works within this DCeased universe. The matte paper was fair quality, even though I would have preferred a gloss, and overall, this was a well-made trade paperback that I might recommend to zombie fans out there. Have you read DCeased or some of the follow-up works? If so, let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what you thought. And that's going to do it for the Comic Book Report. Go ahead and give me a subscribe, a like, and check out some of my other videos. And have a good one.